Welcome back for another live episode here at InfoSec. I'm very excited today to be joined by Alessio, who is co-founder and CTO at Equixly. We've got quite a bit to unpack in this one, but before we start, thank you so much for joining me here. Why don't you maybe tell the audience a little bit more about who you are and maybe why we're here today?
Thank you, too. You're welcome. I'm Alessio, and I'm the co-founder of Equixly. It's more or less 15 years that I work in the field of offensive security before I joined law enforcement to fight crime. And then 4 years ago, after we saw that the spike of APIs were everywhere, we needed to automate the penetration testing in a new way, let's say.
Firstly, actually, let's dig into some of your career because I think you're actually coming from such a phenomenal background of understanding why a product like this is so important. It's almost like you've lived the experience of what happens if you don't necessarily have it. Was there a specific moment in your career that made you recognize between you and your co-founder that, hey, there's a real opportunity here? We need to fix this problem.
So before building Equixly with my co-founder, we built a company that were providing cybersecurity services, so like manual penetration test to enterprise company once a year. But the spike of issues that you could have during the year are much more. So you are actually developing every day. And especially right now with the new productivity tools such as Cloud Code, GitHub Copilot, and so on, you are just writing 10 more lines of code. You are just delivering much more code in production, and statistically more code means also more vulnerabilities. So 4 years ago we identified before all this hype that it was impossible to stay ahead with the developers developing new stuff, and we decided to translate our experience of penetration tester into machine learning models to start to test a broader perimeter and do it continuously.
It's really interesting because you timed it so perfectly. It's almost like you predicted what was going to happen in the market, but to obviously build something, and then we had this boom of not just like agents and AI and machine learning kind of technology, but it's more the fact that when we talk about this coding development, now you don't need somebody to come from a super technical background to truly understand the intricacies of code, even more specifically the security that comes when you're building code, because they can now rely on these new kind of applications or vendors, whatever you want to call them, that can help do it for them. Obviously, that's great from an innovation perspective, but of course, it then creates these limitations when we're getting all these fantastic products. But naturally, now there's a lot more vulnerabilities to them. How is it that you guys are stepping in here to be like, right, we've identified that this is a problem, but how do you actually go about solving that?
So basically, we built a platform that is able to test APIs, web application, or your Gen AI application, such as a Q&A bot or more advanced, let's say, agent flows, and also MCP. And we are using this kind of agents that test without be lazy, without sleeping, daily by day, all your perimeter. A human cannot keep the same level of an agent today, especially if your perimeter is very large, because you have to think that a company for a medium size app that is using APIs, they have around 1000 APIs endpoint, and for each endpoint, you have more or less 10 or 30 parameters in input. And for each parameter, you have around at least 50 different classes of attack. So how you can do it manually?
Yeah. Do you think people realize the scale of what that actually is within companies? Do you think they realize how many points or gaps or whatever they're basically, do you think they risk they are? Or is this kind of still a big lack of education?
There is still a lack of education. They still don't realize, or they don't have the budget, or they think about security still as a cost, not an investment. But things are changing. Also because attackers are already using AIs to automate their job. So we need to think about switching to the same methodology and be proactive and not reactive. So start to attack our application, start to understand what are our perimeters, start to understand if a manual penetration test could actually test all the APIs or not, because most of times the answer is not. You need something that use agents.
Yeah. And I suppose the thing as well, if you're looking at manual pen testing, is the fact that it takes time, right? And like, so you're, once you do that pen test, and then you've got to go away with an individual, they then have to put the report together, then get that report submitted, feed it back. I think the challenge with that being by the time that report is then being fed back and analyzed, well, the vulnerabilities have probably changed, or arguably, whatever vulnerability you've identified, you might not have fixed it in time, and so on. It's probably that time saving thing help close that gap. Like, is it about in the it's going to make a CISO sleep a little bit better at night. They're never going to sleep that well because it's a hard job. But
Yeah, so basically, if you start a penetration test today and there is a medium size application, you will have a report at least in 1 month. In the meanwhile, your developer completely changed the code. So that report you can put it into the trash, or at least part of it you can put into the trash. So our goal is to instead test every new changes that you do in the code as an attacker. And with our MCP server, we provide also a way to the developer to connect his cloud code, his GitHub Copilot to our product and ask for a fix. So fix the code during the development and not when it's in production and maybe someone else already exploited it.
yeah, and I think that's definitely a really hot conversation at the moment. People can kind of talk about, and I've already mentioned this before, but innovation preceding security and so on right now. And I think that hugely parts of the fact of how easily we can develop code and build applications and products or amend software. But I think the other part of it is the fact that we're constantly trying to keep up with the other side of the coin, which is, the bad actors or whatever you want to call them, that basically we're a little bit behind the curve no matter what. So naturally, you want to try and get as far ahead as you can. Yeah, because from when you guys started building 4 years ago to where you are now, the landscape has evolved so significantly, especially if we look at the past 12 to 24 months where we've seen so many, when it comes to Mythos or anything like that, it's massively changed the game in the landscape. How is that implicating kind of the way that you're building, but also the way that people can be looking at your solution?
Yeah, so basically, Mythos or other frontier models that are coming out from AI companies are just models. So you cannot do anything, or you just need to prompt about the security issues that are not deterministic and so on. So most of the issues that we find out could be identified with the models that are already present in the market and that attackers are already using. So the fact is that you need to start today to attack yourself. In order to exploit an API issues or vulnerabilities, you don't need Mythos. Okay, so you can do it also with other kind of models. We built our own models in order to be fast, to be also cheap, let's say, and to provide, but providing the same quality of frontier models.
And I think to add on, or at least put a thought on here, we come across as controversial, but when you look at something like Mythos that's being built, right, it can only learn from the data landscape that it's being given. And if it's not necessarily being built with security in mind all the time, and that's not the foundations of the business, where obviously something like this is, naturally there's probably things that it's missing, or in the sense that you guys are continuously looking to update, oh, okay, this is something new that we've seen in the market, built off a foundation of knowledge of people that really understand the industry. Would you agree with that? Is that kind of a, I suppose,
Yeah,
an implication?
let's say the cybersecurity is just a capability that emerged from Mythos, or let's say they realized models could be used even for cybersecurity. But for people that are working on it by years, it was already known. So Mythos is a very good model, and it will be able to find out or even create exploit for very complex vulnerability, especially on the memory sides.
Yeah.
But most of the companies today are exposing with credential, still SQL injection. So you don't need Mythos for that.
Yeah.
If you are trying to break a safe with Mythos, but your Windows is open. So just find out why you have the window open, what is your perimeter, and how to test it.
Yeah, I actually think you raised such an important point there because it's so often discussed that people can get so excited about all this new technology. They forget the foundation. Well, I'm sorry, but if you're leaving yourself vulnerable here, it does not matter if you're solving this problem because this is easier for them to get through anyway. And nobody's forgetting about this as like the existence of, hey, we can still get in access to your data, your systems, or whatever it may be. So obviously, the past few years have already massively evolved. We can see the value add or the necessity as to why Equixly exists. But if we're to look ahead to the future, and this is hard to predict, right? Because I think 24 months ago, people would not necessarily realize how far we would be in terms of the development today. But what do you think the evolution is going to continue to look like as you guys continue to build, but the landscape continues to evolve?
Yeah, we will see much more incident. Actually, that's bad news, but we will see them because attackers are moving faster than companies.
Yeah.
And we will see that the open weight models will reach the same capabilities of frontier model in 6 to 12 months.
Yeah.
So attackers will have also breather weapons in their hands. So we need to act today. We cannot wait because even if they release the access, what are you going to do with Mythos? Are you going to prompt to find out vulnerabilities in your code? You need all the stack around the model that we built. The next months, the next years that are come are bad for the cybersecurity, I believe, at least for customer, not for attackers.
Yeah.
And we are in a war. We need to understand this.
Yeah, and I think sometimes it's like that what if situation with cyber, unfortunately, for companies at the moment, in the sense that they don't, isn't it's big costs, obviously, to invest in those products, but that mentality of, oh, it might not happen to us, so do we need to invest all of that? And I think that's the most vulnerable mindset you could possibly have. And hopefully, you kind of got to go through the bad to then people go, oh, okay, this isn't optional, this is essential. But I think sometimes you've got to, well, it would be nice not to have to go through the negatives. People sometimes have to. What is it when you're growing up and your parents are like they've got to learn the hard way? It's almost the same with like application when we look at this here. But I mean that's all isn't exciting from a development perspective though, and obviously as bad as that is for the end users, it's also an opportunity for the vendor side for sure. Is there anything for you guys in particular that you're excited about over the next few months, or that kind of anything that you're like, hey, this is what has me personally excited about the industry? Although obviously there's going to be some negatives in that side, but is there anything but this is something we can look forward to?
Yeah, so actually we are so excited about what we are developing because the fact that we started 4 years ago take us an advantage about what how we can scale without so much cost also for company using our own models because the price of using third-party models like OpenAI and Anthropic is just spiking, and this create problems for companies because they see a greater cost, and the fact is that a cost sometimes you don't would like to afford,
Yeah.
or you are hoping that attackers will not attack you. But today the attackers are improving their tools for spy and pry attacks, let's
Yeah.
say, but they are becoming much more intelligent. So probably with this methodology, they will be able to enter in more target with the current capabilities of using the AI. So everyone should act here.
Yeah. And I think it's almost like a bit of a mic drop moment there. So definitely, I think more than anything, it just goes to show how important it is to pay attention to this problem right now and don't leave it until it's too late. So there's a note for anybody tuning in. Axe. But no, honestly, thank you so much for joining me. It's been
It was
great
a
to hear.
pleasure.
It's been great to hear a bit more about you guys, what you've been building. Excited to see how the journey continues. I think some solving a pretty critical part of the industry here. So, but that's it for this episode. So thank you all for tuning in. Make sure to continue following the conversations here while live at InfoSec. But that is it. So I'll see you all next time for more conversations shaping cyber.